Hi, welcome back to The Secret of Love. Anybody who has been watching when we were filming in the studio, um, things have changed since then, haven't they? And I realized that I was missing going into the studio once a month and seeing Jennifer and seeing people and either talking about an aspect of relationships and love, or actually reading from The Secret of Love. We were doing some weeks of that before the book came out as an Audible version. And then I noticed that I was missing that. So I got in contact with Jennifer Evans, the station manager, and she sent back to me that they don't have to film it in the studio, they could do it through Zoom. And she suggested that I get some colleagues to be on a panel discussion. And I thought to myself, well, that's a wonderful idea. I can't believe I didn't think about that earlier. So I put out a message to a Facebook group where there were over, I don't know, last count last year, there were 7,000 people. I don't know how many people are in that group now. But I just put out a message saying that, inviting colleagues to join me on a panel discussion. And I was so lucky to have that responded to by some people who then, and this is our panel for today. And we are a group of people from all over the world. You're going to hear from Marnix, who is from Amsterdam. And you're going to hear from Jan Christensen. If I mispronounce names, please correct me when it's your turn. Jan is from, oh my gosh, I just forgot. From
Canada.
Canada, that's right. We were just talking about that earlier. And I just want to say a little bit as I go around. I'll introduce you to Harry and to Lynn really quickly too. But I don't know all that much about Marnix, but I love what he writes. I have shared some of his posts. I don't know if it was an Instagram or Facebook. He just has such a way of putting out this understanding that's known as the three principles. It's also known as other names as well, innate health. And Jan, I met on a 24/7 Zoom room, which Jan had set up initially as a nonprofit before the virus. She set that up as a nonprofit so that there would be facilitators in a Zoom room any time of day for anyone around the globe to visit. And she immediately turned that over. It was set up, if I understood it correctly, to assist homeless people and people who could not afford a coach or a therapist. And so it would be free to them. And then she turned it over to 72 facilitators to help with a 24/7 Zoom room for people needing a compassionate listening ear going through this virus. And what an amazing project that is. And Harry, I've known for years and years, Harry Drabitsky. He lives out in Canada. So far from Jennifer, though, the other end of Canada, I believe. And Harry is a Three Principles facilitator. He works a lot with addictions. He's the author of a book, which is, let's see if I can remember, The Evolution of Addiction Recovery. And so, there's a lot to be said about that during this discussion about stress, because, well, a meme comes to mind that is circulating around, if you've seen it or heard it, where the saying is something like, I'm either going to come out of this COVID pandemic being 10 pounds lighter and all of my chakras balanced, or I'm coming out of it 20 pounds heavier with a drinking problem. So Howard, I'm glad you can be on the show with us. You know, we laugh about it, but believe me, there are a lot of serious problems that we'll address as well. And Lynn, it's so great to meet you. Come to find out, Lynn lives in my state of Connecticut. She's from Suffield. So I'm going to open up to all of you, and if you know, just start talking. Your little square. It's like Hollywood Squares here, giving my age away, right? Your Hollywood Square will light up, and you'll be the person speaking, so the audience can see who. So the question I want to throw out to you as three principals, coaches, and facilitators, and you were all students either directly from Sydney Banks or students of his students, and this is how this understanding is shared through the years. What have you found that has really been most helpful for yourself or your clients around stress? What have you come to see?
Let me go first. What I wanted to share was that I had had a high degree of cancer, and within that concept, there's a lot of negative impressions about it that people are throwing at you, and you're dealing with a lot of the unknown. And I was at the beach. This is what I want to share about three principles. I was at the beach, and I could feel, even though I know the theory of the three principles, which is don't get caught up in your negative thinking, and if you quiet your mind, you're going to have a positive feeling or an experience within yourself, and it's always within, because three principles is a spiritual psychology, not a psychology, not a system on the psychological mode. It's about you finding out who you are. So I was sitting there, and it was about a week later now that I had found out that I had this cancer, and people were talking to me about it. And I could see these thoughts. See, the cancer wasn't just the physical thing. The thoughts, these little thoughts were creeping into my consciousness without me being aware of it. And that was the cancer of my mind. And it was coming in. And all of a sudden, I could feel I was at the beach. I was looking out, and I could feel this heavy feeling. And I said, that's not me. It doesn't matter what I have and what the outside circumstances are. I am not a guy that likes to deal with a lot of heavy negative feelings. I like to have a good time. And I cannot live in what my understanding of life without having a good time most of the time. And all of a sudden, and this is what Sid emphasized, not change thought mentally, but to have an insight from within. And all of a sudden I saw, I can't do that heavy thing. I can't do that cancer thing with people. And so all of a sudden I was empty again. I was free again. And then I walked in, and people would want to talk about it, and I would let them, and I would discuss it. But I was discussing it from being empty, not feeling like I was defeated or I was in this heavy, heavy thing. And I loved going through the cancer. I loved it. It was so interesting. I had never uncovered or looked at my body-mind connection, and it obviously was there. And so I just started to diligently research and study and talk, because in the end, honestly, we're our own physician, our own therapist, our own doctor. And that, it just worked out really well. But I had a really good time with it. And it was the best. And everyone wanted to talk about the negative. And I would get into talking about all the details because I knew they wanted to talk about it. People do. And then I was free. And that sharing of good feelings inspired so many people. But the number one person it inspired was me. So that's my story of what I wanted to share on this show.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Harry. I had a similar experience, but I want to hear from Lynn or Marnix or Jan.
Sure, I'll be happy to share. So, when this whole, just talking about the pandemic in general, honestly, I really wasn't paying much attention. I don't really do the news much. I'm like Harry, I keep positive and I just don't let things like that in. So when I realized it was really happening, I was taken back a bit. People were shopping and just kind of going crazy. And I don't live in that world. And I can feel myself getting really caught up. And then it just hit me. I knew with the principles, I was always okay. So I just tapped back into that place of grounding. And it came to me, a distinction between fear versus caution, very different. And I know for myself, when I am, living in thought that's not so great, I feel fearful and not able to make good decisions. But when I'm living more in the good feeling, is definitely when I'm in a place of caution. And that's how I operate now. And even my clients, I share that with them as well. And even, this pandemic and the unknown, it happens every day in life, the unknown, it's how we're responding to it, right? And I often say, what have we learned about this? People have an opportunity to reflect, to go inwards. But just even back to that caution piece, I want to remember one more thing before I get lost in thought. The circle of trust. So when we're in caution, a lot of people that I work with are, worried that they're not going to see family, friends. Life obviously isn't the same. But I share this circle of trust, meaning you can still socialize with people who you trust, who are taking precautions, who aren't partying with 30, 40, 50 people and, washing hands, wearing masks, things along that line. And when you're operating more from that place of being settled in an unsettling time is where you can make those good decisions. And, you have that opportunity also to reflect and notice what could be different in your life versus we're always going and going and going, most people. So I always ask my clients and even myself, what is this virus here to teach us? What have I learned about myself? And it's very powerful when you can go and just get quiet and really listen to what your wisdom has to share from you. So I just find it peaceful in an unsettling time when I'm connected into that place of that good feeling. And we're only in that good feeling, right, when we're not in our thinking. So that's just really what I wanted to share.
Oh, thank you, Jan. Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, who's next? Jan?
Okay, I'll go next. There's so many different ways of coming at this, but what I'm sort of thinking about right now is what a stressful life I lived before I came to understand the principles. Life was so stressful. I probably wouldn't be around if I hadn't come to the understanding, because stress takes such a physical toll on your body that I really think probably I would not be here. So I have the principles to thank for that. And I guess the thing that pulled me out of my stress was, so I thought the worst day of my life, and it turned out it was one of the best days of my life. I had a head injury, and I call it the day that the universe dumped me on my head to wake me up. And really it was an experience that I'm looking back at it, thankful that I had it. It took me a long time to recover from that. But I know at one point, there was a lot of medical people and different people trying to help me through this. And I sort of bought into everything they said. But one day they said to me, you know, you've just got to accept that you're disabled now. You can't think like other people can. And you have to live the rest of your life this way. And their suggestion was that I clean tables in a cafeteria. And I said, forget it. I said, forget it. I'm out of here. Said goodbye to every one of them and decided there had to be a better solution. That just didn't fit for me. So I sort of ventured off on my own to figure out what I was going to do. And luckily, I came across Nicola Bird. She was doing a commercial for one of her courses. And it's 2 sentences struck me so strongly. She said, all you really need to do if you're feeling stressed and worried, anxious, is sit down with a piece of paper, tear it into strips, and on each little strip, write what the worry is, what the concern is, and crumple that paper up, and throw it in a bag, put it up on a shelf full of all your worries. That goes up on the shelf and you can forget about it. She had my attention. How do you forget about it? And she said, you just learn to think about your thinking a little differently. You recognize that those thoughts don't have to be present in your mind, and you can live a much more peaceful life. She said a few more things, but I said, what? It can be that simple? Really? And then she mentioned Sydney Banks. So I went off and read about him, and I was just completely flabbergasted that this could be life. And by that time, I was also thinking a lot more clearly and understanding that what they had told me was not true. I knew it wasn't true. I knew that there was a whole lot more that I had to give in my life. So now I had this understanding of Sydney Banks. And then I came to understand that we are not just physical beings, we are also spiritual beings. And that is pretty awesome too, when you get to understand yourself in form and formlessness. It's a beautiful thing. And if I look at my life today compared to back then, I'm sitting here right now. COVID is kind of running rampant in the city that I'm from. And I am not worried about that because I know that everything will work out okay. COVID will be here for a while. Some people say it'll be here forever. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. But right here, right now, I'm safe, I'm okay. And that is all I have to be aware of. And when you get in touch with your spiritual side, you get a chance to see just how much is open to us in this life here on earth. And you get to see that we're actually just energy in motion. And we're full of the same energy that's out there in the universe that fills us, both in the form and formlessness. And we're capable of so much. And I think the really special thing is I'm able to share that with my children, who are absolutely the dearest people in my life. both my daughters are a little stressful. And, you know, when I was young, I was told, well, your mother was stressed and your grandma was stressed. So that's just going to be a way of living for you. Same as I should clean tables. I should accept that I will be stressed and depressed. Not the case at all. You don't have to go through life with these beliefs that are put on you from what we give to people as power, the doctors and the psychiatrists, whoever can come down on us with diagnoses. We don't have to believe those. We can move on and embrace ourselves in the physical and the spiritual. And stress just drops away as you lose the limiting beliefs. You learn that you're capable of feeling almost no stress. Stress once in a while, but it falls away pretty quick. And you're capable of feeling a great amount of love and compassion for other people. And I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jan. Yeah, it's great. Now let's hear from Marnix.
Yeah, there are so many ways I can come at this, but you know, I think it's good for people to realize that COVID is not an emotional virus. You know, you see so many different responses to the same thing, but it's not coming from the virus. And just like Harry just told about, your cancer is not an emotional disease as well. Now, I don't want to dismiss the anxiety people have around it and hopelessness there sometimes can arise, but the way we go about stuff like that is caused by our stories we have around it. Now, when Jan talks about, you know, the only thing you can do the rest of your life is waiting tables. I didn't have the same thing, but I've been diagnosed seriously, like when I was, I think about when I was 20, about my addiction, my depression, and my anxiety. Now, I heard that my addiction was something I had to live with. Like my parents were addicted to alcohol, and their parents had problems with substances as well. They were very depressed and very anxious. So, well, it was just, you know, it was a bad draw in the lottery, something like that. And of course, I believe that, like we all do. When we go to somebody who has studied for 20 years, and we believe that they know what they're talking about. Now, in a way, they know what they're talking about, but what they're talking about doesn't seem to be right, to be honest. Because, you know, 8 years ago, I quit drinking, and everything has changed ever since for me. I never had a glass of alcohol since. There's no craving whatsoever. There hasn't been in 6 years, I guess. To me, alcoholism or any addiction is not a disease. It's a way of coping with life. That's it. So many people feel very uncomfortable and very distressed, and they don't feel at ease. So what they do, well, they do whatever comes to them. And when it gives them at least a little bit of relief, they just stick to it. That's all that happens. Like an addiction is an endless cycle of doing the same thing, which causes the thing that you were taking it for in the first place. So I've always been interested in spirituality. Even when I was a kid, I couldn't help it. You know, it's something that is, I think, built in most people, or in every person in the world. And so when I quit drinking, after a year, I felt strong and fresh enough to start and explore why it is that some people are happy and others aren't. So what's the difference? Started reading a lot, and then I came across the phenomenon of enlightenment, or self-realization, or awakening, or liberation. And I read about that, and I thought, oh, now, because I thought it was only a thing that was attainable for a couple of sages in India who could also levitate at the same time. But I didn't know that it was actually a very common thing and a very attainable thing for many people. And I even think that we are here to discover who we are. And I think Harry said the same thing. And I didn't call it that way back then, but then when I started reading about it, I wanted to become enlightened. That was my biggest goal, because I thought, well, if I reach that, then I'll be fine. I'll be done. I'll be living in bliss forever. Now, I've had a couple of experiences that you could call enlightenment experiences, and they were very interesting, and they were very important in my life. But the most important thing I learned is not to be afraid of life anymore. After all my anxiety, I just realized all the things that I've ever been afraid of were only a figment of my imagination. We're only living in my fantasy. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that for 15 years. And I lived in a very small world. I didn't want to go outside anymore. I lived in my bedroom, and I hardly dared to go to the bathroom. And I think most people don't realize how much freedom there is within them, and they don't realize how much they're looking outside of them. Now we know that. We know the cliches that it's within yourself and you don't need stuff, but we still do it. And I've seen with my clients that when you're lucky, you look in all the right places long enough to become very miserable, because it's the best motivation to start looking in a different direction. And I love, during COVID, I've worked with so many people with so many different responses to the exact same thing. Some people say, oh, COVID, so many opportunities. The world will change and everything will change, and we'll need new jobs and new ways of making money, and everybody's going to stay home, and we have so many opportunities to connect to our families again and stuff like that. And other people say this is going to waste the economy forever, and they're so afraid of being sick. And I think it's a very, very, very interesting in the history of humankind, where we are right now, with a world that has never been as comfortable as right now, with all the stuff we have, all the goodies we have, all the luxury we have. And at the same time, it looks to me that we haven't never been as miserable as we are right now, with all the burnout and the stress and all the young children, being depressed. So I think there is an amazing opportunity to change society in a profound way, and I love being part of that. So that was my thing for now.
That's great, Marnix. Thank you. There's such a thread that ran through everything, all of your personal stories. And I just would like to see what, so much comes to me to share about that. But essentially, you're all talking about the fact that every human being, not just the five of us, but every human being has an innate health within themselves. And having this understanding, we've all referred to the three principles, myself also, maybe somebody's listening who never heard of the three principles. It's simple. It's just mind, thought, and consciousness, which is continually in operation, taking essentially formless energy, where we come from, the spiritual formless energy, and bringing it into the physical world of form. Each of us is created as humans to have that capacity. And we're all going to feel whatever we think in that moment. And that's what causes moods. Some people have more mood, are moodier than others because their thinking shifts more. So you also all spoke about letting go of the fear factor. There really is nothing to fear because we're making it all up through our ability to think things up. And sometimes it looks pretty scary. I mean, just before coming on the show, I realized, oh, I'm feeling stressed thinking about, you know, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. It's the first panel I've done online. And so I said, you have to go take a walk of this wonderful park that I can walk around the whole thing out my back door, and it's less than a mile. I mean, that's another whole story that got built up and fixed up beautifully during COVID. And now that's where people go. They can 6 feet distance. Beautiful walk on a boardwalk, and you can do it keeping 6 feet between you, and people come with masks, and yes, are they playing together, but people are relatively safe. I know I'm safe because I'm keeping my distance. And so as I'm on this walk, it occurred to me how my stress, I went from feeling stressed to feeling excited and intrigued and, you know, I can't wait to do this. It's just a different way of seeing the same thing. Now, something I'd like to share with whoever is listening is one of my favorite sayings about stress is from the psychiatrist, Dr. Pettit, who talks about stress being a love letter. When you feel stressed out, it's like getting a love letter from the universe, letting you know your thinking is just going off the deep end, and you can look in a different direction. Just look in a whole different direction. You don't know what's going to come to mind next. Thoughts come willy-nilly, and we get to choose which ones we bite into. You know, like I love the metaphor of walking down a buffet line. You're not going to take everything on your plate. You're going to leave what you don't like and take what you do like. Well, it's really the same in life. And, you know, it's not like we miss by understanding that. It's not like we miss something important. That's another story we tell ourselves about stress. This is important. It feels so heavy that we really have to take care of it. No, you have all the common sense, innate health and common sense and wisdom you need to take care of whatever happens in the moment in a clear mind. When our mind is not filled with stressful thinking and upsetting thinking, we're more clear to go in a healthy, common sense direction. That is miraculous to me, that every human has that capacity. And, you know, I didn't understand that. I did not learn that until I heard my first Sid Banks lecture back in 1985. Prior to that, like Marnix, I was not a happy camper. You know, I didn't go in the direction of alcohol and drugs, but I went in the direction of very depressing thinking and not good enough thinking, and yuck, it was awful. You know, and that could have been like the time of my life, the best time. So if you can let go of fearful thinking, what comes in it, or what is revealed, is a feeling of love. That's another unbelievable, miraculous thing. And, you know, even before I heard anything about the 3 principles and listened to Sid Banks at all, I had read a book, I think it was in graduate school, written by Dr. Jampolsky, an MD, called Love is Letting Go of Fear. Now, he tapped into something, because that is so true. That is so true. So let me throw out another question to you. We've got about another 20 minutes. And how does this connect with relationships? You know, with people stuck at home with one another? I hope they're not, you know, I'm sure there are times they feel like they're stuck at home with one another. And sometimes there's some awful fights that develop. And how is it different for the four of you and the clients you work with when they gain I call it a simple understanding, but it's incredibly profound. And this understanding is still evolving for me, as I think the four of you would say the same thing. It just never ends. What you can see when you look in this direction of mental health and well-being. So.
Well, for me, I don't really look at the psychological very much. So it's not my approach. I'm more interested in the well-being. So when I'm dealing with someone who's in addiction, I just dealt with a client who was on fentanyl. And then the 9th session, which was pretty much his last session, I asked him, well, what are you on? And it wasn't a concern to me. I'm interested in teaching people to feel good, not what you do not to feel good and then stop doing it type of stuff. So I'm emphasizing positive feelings. And that's what basically what Marnix's world he was talking about. It's a very serious, heavy world, and which is very problem oriented, and you're really stuck in your head. Well, obviously, if you're stuck in your head, no matter whether you're in a relationship or in on your own or whatever, you're going to have problems, because in there's not going to be much peace of mind. So when you see a smile, when you see a feeling of well-being, that person starts to feel light. They lighter, they start to feel vision. They start to see that they actually are, and this is a tough one, beautiful. And once you feel you're beautiful, of course, your level of consciousness, to use a 3P word, starts to go up. Once you catch a better feeling, the heaviness looks different. And yeah, you have to understand about thought and fear and all that stuff. But that is self-evident. See, Sid never talked much about the stuff that the psychologists talked about. That was for them. That wasn't for him. That was their interpretation. What he just talked, what is, and as Marnix says, I was interested in the spiritual. What is your connection to God? Well, you are God, so let's talk about that, except let's call it mind, because God is a religious word. And so he talked about what is mind. And then he didn't talk about the psychological concept of thought. He talked about original thought. Again, what is the source of our good feelings? And the same thing with consciousness. He did talk a lot about levels of consciousness, but he primarily, and he used, whether if you're religious, he used Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or Allah consciousness, and then it became divine consciousness. It evolved into that. So the essence to me is feel good, you're going to have a pretty good time. Feel bad, guess what?
Shitty time.
And we all know that.
Everybody's thinking it, and I said it, yeah. Yeah, when I talk to my clients about, the misconception that our experiences, our feelings are caused by the outside world, which everybody believes, most people believe, I always ask them, have you ever been in love? Can you remember that? Can you remember how being in love changes the world? How when you have to wait before an open bridge, you suddenly enjoy the open bridge because it allows you to watch boats, or think about your new lover, or when you're stuck in traffic when you're in love. You all of a sudden you have all this space and this love inside of you, and it colors your whole world. And when you're at work and you have this colleague that is always whining and complaining, you all of a sudden are are able to look at it in a fresh way when you're in love, because then you can see, well, he's probably going through a difficult time right now, instead of, can he just shut up a little bit more than he does right now? So when we come from a different place, the whole world changes. Now, most people have had experiences like this, and it's a very practical way to explore the idea of that we are actually creating the feeling within ourselves, and it's not the world who's responsible for it. Now, for the professional victims among us, like I was once, that is not good news, because, well, you can't blame anybody else anymore. But for most of us, it means that there is a world of autonomy waiting for you when you realize, whenever I think about somebody or something in a specific way, that's also how I feel it. It's like we're living in our own movies constantly. And it's pretty easy for most people to get at least a glimpse of that and feel a little bit more free around that. Because in the world of, you did that, it's your fault, it's his mistake, you never win, because there's always a new person that is getting in your way. But in the world where you come from, at the world from a 180 degree turn, all of a sudden, you will be in power. It's you who will be able to live life in a lighter way. Traveling lighter is what I've seen for myself. And coming from this freer place, or what Harry said, if you just feel happy a little bit more, it changes the world. And it really does work that way. And you don't need all the circumstances to be exactly the way you want them, like most people do. Just realize that if I bring the love to the table, everything starts to taste better, instead of everything on the table should be exactly the way I want it to. So that's my main goal when I coach people, to take them back to the place within them where they know this, where they feel this directly, not as a nice concept, as a nice intellectual quote. No, as something that they remember, that they still know, that they felt when they were younger or less burdened in their head. And when you get a feel for that, when you rediscover it, it grows. And it's like a skill. Feeling good is like a skill. And it comes from your heart, and it comes from living with your heart and staying close to your heart. So I like to talk about it that way.
Yeah, it's a matter of looking within, right? That the teacher is within us. When you really go inside and you see how things are working out. Yeah. Who else wants to talk about love?
Yeah.
Wes.
I have something similar to, I call it like the honeymoon effect. People fall in love, the world, is wonderful, and the person that they're with is wonderful. And then suddenly, life happens, right? Something happens when they don't really understand where their experience of life comes from. And all of a sudden, the same person that they've, fallen in love with, how long later, they find something wrong, in a sense. They've changed. So, when I'm able to work with people and point them to actually where that experience is coming from, it's coming obviously from the way that they're using thought. But when you really just come from that place of love, showing up empty when you're with someone, free of judgments, free of criticizing, And even in times of COVID, when people are home, COVID, and kids are home, we all operate from that place of love. That's what you see, more love and understanding and compassion with people. And that's the answer. Love's always the answer, right?
It's so true. Absolutely. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, a lot. You know, we all do, I'm sure, with our clients. That is exactly what people can find, even if you're in a 20-year relationship. If you go back to no judgment, no criticism, you'll feel love again. It's just bound to happen. It's just judgment and criticism that gets in the way of a beautiful feeling of love. Jan, you want to add something?
Yeah, I do. I think during times like this, what we're experiencing in the world right now, when people are at home with their loved ones and things aren't going as well as they would like them to be, it's important for people to understand that we have access to something that's quite remarkable. It's a whole different kind of wisdom that we can tap into, different from what we just learn from books. So when you're trying to problem solve, you might not have the answers about or things people have told you, but there's a special way of getting quiet inside your head and listening for what you might hear for an answer. So if you just stop the chatter in your head and get quiet and ask the question and believe that you'll get the answer, you most always will. And people think, how can that be? And I know I thought that. And until I leaned into the idea that I believed I would get the answer, I didn't get the answer. So it's very important to put your belief behind the fact that we have this wisdom, which is, again, the energy behind life, the energy that we're made of, and the energy that flows through us has an intelligence to it. And that being within us, that energy, allows us this wonderful capability of just simply getting quiet in the head and asking the question and waiting for the answer. So if you're having trouble with your spouse or your children, it's not even that much up to you to figure out what to do. It's more up to you to get quiet in your head and ask the question and wait for the answer. It'll come to you. I know it sounds a little like magic, and it is really a little like magic, but it's what we're capable of as humans. And it's pretty wonderful. I suggest everybody try it. Get quiet and listen.
Well, most people know about this, you know, when they have a problem and they can't work it out with their intellect. And most people have an experience like, well, then I take a shower or I go walk and then I just let go of the problem. And out of nowhere, the answer arises, the solution arises. So most people know this. It's very practical. It's very normal, actually, although it is magical.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Shine the light on that, though, so people realize that it's already built in. When they get out of the cacophony of their stressful thinking, they're going to settle down and see where to go. And it's so interesting. I work with couples that when they get out of their way of judging and criticizing, you know what happens? They become compassionate towards the spouse or the child who's getting upset. Rather than judging it and getting angry, they'll clear their mind and what comes out is compassion. Oh, wow, my partner is saying these horrible things and doing these stupid things because they're stressed or they're insecure. You know, it's a whole different twist when you see it a whole different turn in what occurs next. If you can drop into that feeling of love and compassion rather than judgment that they're out to get you or they're doing it on purpose. They just want to get me stressed. They want to make me as miserable as they are. Actually, no. But that's the stories we can tell ourselves. And that's why when you quiet down, the stories are, they kind of dissipate and vanish.
I think it's always very helpful to see how crazy we can get ourselves, you know, to respect the craziness of other people. Mm-hmm. You know, I always ask people, have you ever worried about something then that didn't occur? They always, well, yes, most of the time. And well, stop doing it. But we all do this. So if we see how crazy we can get and become aware of that, become respectful of our own craziness, then we can see the craziness in other people and don't take it as personally as we did.
Reminds me of Mark Twain's quote. He said, let's see, he said, I've had many problems in my life, most of which never happened.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some of them actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The definition of worry. So I think we're closing in on the hour here, and I thought it would be nice to go around and just say something about, you know, what you'd love for people listening to know about, share how to get in touch with you. I think there will be a little blurb on, but, you know, for now, why don't we go around and do that? Jan, what would you like people to know about you and how to reach you? And
well, I've just written a book and it will be coming out in the next couple of days. I'll be putting links up for people to be able to purchase it. And that's a good way to get in touch with me. My email address is inside there.
Jan, what's the name of it?
Thank you for asking. It's called Magnificent Mind, which is what we all have, a magnificent mind.
Love it.
And yeah. And of course, I'm also on Facebook. You can see the spelling of my name. And In Search of a Peaceful Mind is the name of my nonprofit. Marnix and I also have a radio show, Magnificent Mind. And that you'll see on my Facebook page as well. We're having a lot of fun with that.
It's
showing
excellent.
people.
I've seen it, heard of it. Excellent.
Oh,
I've watched.
thank you.
Yes. Excellent. Great job.
Yeah, thank you. So those are some good ways to get in touch with me.
That's great. Thank you. Can't wait to get a hold of your book, Jan.
Thank you.
Marnix, you want to go next?
Yeah, I would like to say to people, don't get in touch with me, get in touch with yourself. But if that doesn't work out, get in touch with me. You can find my website is Marnix, MARNIX.coach or .help or .nl. I'm on Facebook. I did a TED Talk on fear. You can find it on YouTube. And I work with clients all over the world. Yeah, if you're interested in having a little chat about life in general and peace of mind in particular, well, you know, do your best and find me.
Thanks, Marnix. That's great. Yeah. Lynn.
Sure. Let's see. The best way to get in touch with me is either through Facebook or missionpossibleyou@gmail.com or my website, missionpossibleyou.com. And I too work with people all around the world and love this understanding and love sharing it with people. And I always have classes going on, and I would love to invite people to reach out. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Harry, my website is acttraining.biz, stands for Advanced Coaches Training. I've started a new a webinar series called Tawheed, Spiritual Unity of the Three Principles, aimed towards the Muslim crowd. For 3.5 years, I've been co-host on Addiction, Alcoholism, and the Three Principles website, actually Facebook group, excuse me. And within it, there's a lot of 90 free videos, all advanced, state-of-the-art stuff on addiction, alcoholism, three principles, and an understanding of the three principles. And my book, Evolution of Addiction Recovery, Book 1, obviously the next one is called Book 2, is out there. And like all the others, the reason we're here is we care. Like we have all gone through our own personal journeys, but we care. Each at a different level of consciousness, each giving it everything we have. Because every time Marnix or Lynn or Jan or Lori help someone, the benefits are immense with it. That's why we do it. That's why truth is so much fun. That's why Jan writes her book, because, you know, she writes it first for herself, but then if it helps one other person, and that's a quote from Sid, by the way, if it helps one other person, it's a success. If this show helps one person, it's a success. And that's what we want. People to be happy and content in their life. And that, by the way, is how Sid defined success.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Harry. Yeah, and I always direct people to the URL sidbanks.com. So you can get some short audios and videos too. I think there are 20-minute videos there. It's really nice to hear. And people know how to get in touch with me. And I also want to say that, you know, there's another URL I want to give out, which is 3PGC, Three Principles Global Community .org. And that will list all sorts of events, seminars, you name it. And it's wonderful if you can be in a 2-day seminar or a week-long seminar. It just really, that consistency puts people in, or retreat, it just really gets people in a quiet enough mind that they can hear something within themselves that really will set people free from their own upset. And yeah, so, and I almost forgot to mention Mystery School. I'm starting a 6-week program where we can all dive into an understanding the three principles, and sort of like a book club where we'll be reading and listening to Sid. So there's lots of ways. You don't have to want to be a three principles coach. Just get it for yourself. That's the point, is just getting it for yourself, and you never know where that leads. So thank you all for joining me. It's just been wonderful. I really appreciate this time spent with you, and hope to see you again soon.